Are you there? Hello? Okay, great. I can't hear you maybe. Hey, hello?
Hello, hello.
Okay, good, good, good. You're no longer God. Okay. Now, uh, I'm going through some of the pull requests. The first one is done. You guys, if you guys take a look at the code, right? Uh, Take a look at what he create. Okay, you didn't write any description, right? But when I look at the file, okay, one commit, and I look at the file changes, right? So I see that what's a good way to look at file changes without. Oh, it's crazy, huh? Like I want just a list of files. Okay, it's like this. But I can see that he add a new route for surveys published, right? And then he just display them. Uh, Take advantage of the form. So you guys would give it a try, but what happens is I don't think you should call it a survey form because we already have a survey, right? We're not going to touch anything. It's more like a response form, right? So look at my instruction. No, I mean a comment here, right? First is good. We all need to know this. In our week 2, we know that okay, we can use something simpler than a form like a user form or something that's not coupled with Active Record. So we can create our own model, include some modules from Active Model. But here's another approach: is to use reform. So I say it looks good, yes, and you can use the partial depending on the question type. However, don't publish survey form is not really correct, right? What we're going to look at is something similar to sort of a response. Okay. Does it make sense? It makes sense for you guys. So when you create a response, it will create a new response with the survey ID. That is the survey, right? So I mentioned that, and then there's another. Let's look at another person's. So, God, awesome work. Also, late night submit. Very nice. Ka, can you explain a little bit what you do here?
In this part, I'm just trying to create one default choice for all questions.
Yeah, that's good. Uh, Create one default choice. Okay.
Yeah, especially for the text question.
Populate. So you add this populate question, and where is that call? Oh, here, populator, right?
Yep.
Okay. On default, and what's happening here? Oh,
There
you
is
actually make it.
rendering.
You actually make it. Okay, that's fine. Right, but this form doesn't work yet, right?
Of course.
Cool. It's good try. And then this one is also interesting. Right? Can you explain to me why you remove the strong parameters? Just curious.
Yeah, because I read the document and it say so form only use whitelisted param
Uh huh.
field, so we don't need the strong parameter.
Okay. Right. So the idea here is, well, it's just very similar, right? You can use strong parameter or you can pass in. Notice that in Rails 5, this is no longer a hash. So if you use it in Rails 5, sometimes you have to do a 2-hash method. It's now wrapped in an active controller parameter class. Yeah, it behaves like a hash, but in some cases it doesn't work. Okay, so what's interesting here is that basically reform, it's quite useful, but it you call a method, right? You call a method validate. It's actually very similar to update attributes, and then if that but it doesn't save, right? If it's valid, then you can save it. So I hope this is still very difficult. Like basically, I'm going to show you, give you guys my version of it, and then we'll try to make it better in this week. So this is interesting. I can definitely see that. Oh, okay, you want to handle the one type of question, yeah, differently. Okay, so this is whether if it's a short answer, you don't have choices, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then if they're not, then so all of you guys are able to display the form. Can you actually submit and save the form?
No.
No, right?
So just submit and we don't save.
Can you
the
can you
response.
save the response?
The response?
Can you save a response? Have you guys tried it?
Not yet.
Okay, but do you think it's easy or hard?
I think to if I add some code to make it
Yeah.
workable, it's easy, but to reduce it or
Okay. Okay. So
see from the ID.
right. Oh yeah. Next time, just get ignored. Okay, it's very hard to see, huh? All right. So what do you do in here? Nice. So you add answers and response choices, responses. Okay. Now, what's the difference between these two?
I think one response will have many answers.
Mm.
It's answer for one question, and
Okay.
one answer will have many responses.
Okay.
Because, for example, if you see a checkbox, we have three checkbox.
Mm.
Checkbox one will be unchecked. I will
Okay.
say one response.
Okay. I think I get it. So, what if I have an actually? Let's see. How do I make this? Okay. So, I think you only need one though. So let's say we talk about schema a little bit. So we have the survey model, question model, choice model, right? So then we have user, but then each time we have a user take a survey, that's a survey response. I'm going to call it response for short, okay? Now, technically you don't have to store the question. You can actually just only store something like, choice response. Let's call choice response, maybe a short name for it is answer, right? Okay. Why? Because let's say, what's your name? And then here is one text box, right? Let's see. Technically, you can store it as a choice. That's the one choice. What if you allow user to enter 1, 2, 3 choices? What's happening here is we don't display blah 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 here, right? So that's one thing. What's your favorite color? And here that will be like let's say red, blue, green. So what are your favorite colors? So in this one, each time the user take it, you create a new answer, right? So this is answer create current user, so current user choice, this choice response, this current response, right? And multiple choice is the same thing. So let's say what's your gender, and here will be male, female, other, right? And then there's only one. So the tricky case is actually this one. If we treat this as one choice, then you can just store it under answer. But if you treat it as no choice, then you store it as a question response, right? But I think in that one, then it's difficult. You have to load it from two different models.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's agree to just do with the choice. This is an sort of implicit choice. So later you can even write down the names, and you can support multiple text boxes if you want, right? So right now this is a short answer, this is short, technically this is short answer question type. Later you can easily support short answer but multiple, if you want. It's just a different requirements. Do you understand the short answer? Let's say if I say, write 3 words that come to mind.
Yeah.
And then now, actually, you can have this as sort of this question type, you know, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can even have other stuff. So we want to build our survey tool to be quite powerful, but we start out with 3 basic question types. Okay. So what's really interesting is how do we submit the responses. So you guys see, let's look at the let's look at how we did the survey form. So okay, I'm going to take a look at the survey form. Now, to be lazy, right? We start out with just a very basic form and then ask the user to create a survey. And then from then on, we just update. Okay? So I'm going to, nope, no install. Okay. I'm going to boot up the server. Let's run this. Let's run Postgres. So what do we have here? We go to new. Okay, come on. Is it up yet? Rails 5 is quite buggy because it includes the sockets stuff. So sometimes it's blocked. You know, sometimes you just have to like cancel it and then do funny stuff to it. So in Rails 5 it uses Puma, so you cannot even do Rails. So I implemented this access thing. So it's let's hold on. Huh? Wait. Okay, so actually. Okay, let's sign in first. Okay, so okay. Survey new. Now this one's straightforward. Anyone can do, right? So my first survey, enter. I need to remove it. So that's the lecture for today. All the access permission, access control stuff. So edit. Let's remove that. Authorize here. Okay. Let's not authorize it. So that's this guy. Okay. How do we make this work? You see this one, guys. You say what's your name, right? As soon as you create it, it's saved. This question type, you can add, I guess, name. You guys can't see, but it's really bright. Can't see. Can you actually see a text box here?
Yes.
Okay, we can.
Really?
Yeah.
It has
Yeah, there's a text box. So I don't know. We can't see it because it's too bright over here. So let me see if I turn off flux. It's gonna help. Can't see, huh? Okay, that's fine. Then let's say you can add a question, and let's say here, you know, what's your what are your favorite color? And this time I have a checkbox question type, right? Something like that, and then you can do red, blue, now green. Even this form itself so far, it's not easy. So actually I'm going to change it to multiple choice for now. Okay, what's your, because it's just easier to explain first. All right, and you can delete them, right? You know, purple, and then you can delete them. I have it somewhere in a different branch. Choices, is it here? We don't have choices controller? Oh man, it's okay. It's not that important, but and I have it somewhere else. All right, So what's happening here? Let's look at this form. How do we create this form when we create a survey? We learned the reform thing. I think it helped because if you look at this edit form, okay, ignore the noise, which is the errors, but here's the main, just the title stuff. Here's the cool stuff, right? For each question, you sort of wrap it in one thing. I call it, form questions. So what is this questions exactly? In form, no, in form here, survey form, we have a survey form object, and there's a collection here, and use question form. So it means it wrapped question in the question form, and when you render this guy, it has title type just like normal question, but where is that file form question form, and this question form title type, and in choices it go to choice, right? Now notice I have inline here. It's a block type property content. It means this is not a choice form, but it's just a choice because I don't need to create an extra class. It's good enough that basically this will create a bunch of wrapper around choices, right? And you can display that. And then you notice we use the dynamic type, so you can support as many question types you want. In here, this is just a presentation, so that's why it's nothing. But here though, right, it's using nested form concept. So how does it work? If you click on this inspect and you see this text field, where's its text field? You guys see it? This one, right? What's the name? What's the name of this one? Add this one, right? So how does it work? Do you guys know this one? It will add to an array of. So this form basically, here's how our survey form works. So survey form, you can use it with survey, but then you just add a lot of code to your survey model. But let's just keep it separate. So basically what you submit, when you submit, your params will be, obviously you have survey, right? And that's a hash. And then yeah, exactly. So you have title, my first survey. What else? So that's questions, attributes. Hey Kai, if anything not clear over there, feel free to ask. Okay. So questions, attributes. This is a special naming convention. So what's next? Actually, is it right? Actually, it's an array, right? When you do that, over here is an array. So it's the first, the second, 1, 2, 3, 4 here, and it's automatically understood. Technically, it's also Rails at first it will submit like this, and then each question is in here, and then one is in here, but then it become an array. Okay. Now, what's inside here? We have question attribute, choices attribute, right? So choices in each attribute, and then what's in there? Content. So let's say user check a box, or no, this case is not user. Okay, this is just red, blue, green. These are the choices, right? So content, as I say, red. So we need a question title too, right? Title. So title here is what? What's your favorite color? Right? So you guys are clear with the structure? Does it seem like cool, right? The structure is clear, but the thing is, that's only one, okay? This is only one question, then you have more questions, right? This the survey app is actually one of the very complicated example, because as you work on it, you're not careful, this can get really crazy. So I have a few more questions here. I have two questions, right? So let's do another one. What's the first one that I have? What's your name? What's your name? But in this case, it's actually empty, right? I just have one choice, but it's empty. Now, what if when you're editing the survey, though? When you edit the survey, you actually have the ID of the question, right? And then you know to replace the right ID, question ID 1, question ID 2, and in this case, whoa, in this case, it's choice ID 1, choice ID 2. Okay, and down here you have choice attribute, so that's wrong again. Actually, that's one choice, right? This is red, blue. Oh, let's say I just do one more ID 3 4. Okay, sorry, I type 3. Any question about the structure? Make sense? Make sense? No, how does it work though? So when you pass this into your into your surveys controller, right? Surveys controller, and action is update, right? So this one act just like survey form object, act like survey. So what you have is first you find their survey form, right? So you say survey.find params ID. But what's next is, I think I have my form, which now makes sense, right? Survey form dot what? Huh? New survey, right? So what's cool here is now you say survey dot validate, and then now you have params survey. That's when it's like, how does it work? Because how does it know to save all these guys like that? Does anyone know? How does it know to go in and save? So basically, what it's trying to do here, if it will first validate, it go here and validate each guy. How does it know to convert questions, param survey, questions, attributes to my? How does it convert that to my survey? No, form dot questions.
Because we define the mapping within survey form, so we define
Yeah.
property and collection.
Okay, so but it's still a bit magic, and it's a bit of a problem. So what Rails has, I used to do this, and I think overall it's really convenient. But has anyone used this? Raise your hand. No? Okay, so what happens is here you can say if you say accept nested attributes for, and then pass, it's not clear here, but basically this is a user with avatar, so that's a has one relationship. So I'm saying if we use Rails accept nested attribute for, okay, then it look like this class. If we don't use reform at all, okay, it will look like this. Has many questions, accepts nested attributes for questions, okay, and then this give you survey.questions when you update this survey with say update attribute, if you pass in questions attributes, then it understand and update this guy. Okay, but what if inside questions you have choices except nested attributes? And this one is one of the weaknesses of Rails, is that it just keep adding too many methods, and your model becomes way too big, and it's very difficult.
Why do you say keep adding more methods?
So let's say here, 1 second. So let's say, title, what's your name, blah blah blah, right? Okay. So the idea is the same. Up when you pass in just update attributes. So how does it work? This accept nested attributes.
So you mean if question it have many choices, you need to define.
Then inside
accept
question you have accept nested attribute
also.
choices. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. So you should try it too. Now if you don't use reform, you should try it as well. And you guys should all try implementing this survey, because it's not easy. As you add more stuff, you're like, holy cow, it's actually difficult. So then you understand maybe TinyPaul's code, very similar stuff, it's like that. So then let's look at responses. It's even harder. Response is actually much harder. How would you do a response page? So here,
TinyPaul is much simpler than this.
huh?
TinyPaul is much more simpler than
Really?
this. Yeah, because we don't allow flexible question type like this.
Ah,
Only 3 question types.
okay. Now I want to have, let's say I want to view the results. Results actually not hard, right? So maybe it's like, you build something called responses. Do I have the code in here? Oh man, I don't have responses controller. Yeah, I code that in my other machine, and none of that is in here. All right, so responses. How would you build the responses view?
View.
Like, so you have to actually display. I want to build similar to Google Form.
Yes.
So let's go back to this.
So we combine.
After finishing our class, we have to be able to build the same thing, right? Challenge you to you can build your own way, but it has to be just good, right? You can change. So far, we can something like that. We can add an option. You can change to the type, right, and update right away. But when you go responses, you don't have to do the graph yet. But when you have free time, guys, at home, each of you should find a way to make it closer to this functionality, right? So we can show this table where if you have question 1, question 2, and all this column. Right? So today's lecture, that's just recap. Let's go home and do homework. We have to do this feature. Today's lecture is on user management stuff, so I cannot talk too much about this. If I have maybe I can have do I have surveys, responses? Let's see. Oh no, I don't have it. So
Maybe in fact.
now I will explain to you guys though. How would you implement? So that's survey form. Okay. How would you implement taking a response? So which we'll call it survey response. Okay. So basically, we go to user go to where? User go to survey ID responses new, right? Right? User clicks, right? Agree, like I agree to the terms, and a start survey, or start survey button, start button, right? Now user n gets directed to surveys. Now of course you can nest it, or you don't have to. Now it's one edit. Make sense?
Okay.
Make sense? Now then user takes a survey. for real. So how does it look like for controller responses controller? This is where it gets pretty interesting. Let's say I have a response because I already created, right? Nothing crazy here. You can use the response model again, but we're just trying to use the form model. So we have response form dot new response. So we delegate some method, and this response form, this form can act like response. So you can do form for that one. We agree, right? Okay. So in your view, how does it work? App / responses / edit. Okay. So form for what? Hey, read with me so you guys are not too tired. Form for response, right? Now, if you submit to you guys know how? If you submit to surveys 1, 2, 3 responses 1, 2, 3, if you post to this, of course, like in Rails now it's patch. How do you do this?
Method.
You actually have to pass in the survey here as well. Yeah? Right? So that it is nested, right? But because, let's just keep it simple. I can just update it like this, okay? So then, you can pass in response, but we're not passing in the response. We actually pass in form because it behaves like response. We all agree with me over there? Is that okay?
Yeah.
And of course, then I don't expose this response. I just make it a local variable. Okay? So that's very simple. But what's in here? Right? What's in here?
So we have
The questions, right?
the questions.
But when you display the question, you're not storing the responses to a question. So,
Yeah.
Okay, if you adding, it's something like fields for.
Question.
Does anyone know why we use fields for? Does anyone know?
Generate the attribute.
Yeah. Why fields for? Basically, field for is just right now when you use form for, you can submit it to program survey, right? When you use fields for, but from form for, right? Then you get in there. Then you have like survey. If you've got for blah, then you have blah here, and then attribute name. Okay. So then then that's why this is the input, right? So input name equals that, and that's why we go to that's why we get param survey blah blah, right? So let's say in this case fields for, what if we call it questions? Then we have questions. Yeah. So fields for, if you use the accept nested attributes, it's still a little confusing. If you pass in like questions here, it will iterate, and then it realizes that this form.questions is an array. Then it will do multiple. It's just like rendering a partial, right? So I'm going to do the simple version first. It's not the shortcut, right? So here's the so field question. So I just call FQ, okay? Now when Rails magic here, if form.questions, okay, is an array, it will run fields for many times. So it's the same as this, which is less magic. What if I do form.questions, just give you access to my question variable, and you pass in the variable as a second argument, but now it's an object, it's not an array. So it will understand to only run it once. Right, so you guys understand this one or not?
No.
So I just say for each question,
Yeah.
I will group it under fields for FQ here.
So it can be question with S.
Well, here. Which one? Here. It's still questions because you wanted to group it under this one questions. But the difference is when you use fields for, when you pass in an object, then it only run it once. Or if you do, it's the same as when you do it with the string, with a string, and just does it once.
It's just
But if you pass in a symbol, but then you have formed out questions the same, so that's why it's confusing. You can just forget about the array method. If you do it yourself here, you can get the question directly. That's nice. If you use the fields for this way, let's say if you use the other way, how do you get question? Do you know? Let's say if you use this similar to render partial, how do you? Can anyone help me? So this is the same as calling pass form the questions to it. It's similar to form for, right? You actually passing. It's the same as this, but it's now an array, so it will loop over this array. So how do you get the question inside here? So this will run. So here, this will run. Form dot questions dot size times. That makes sense, right? So it's the same as above. But how do you get the question variable? You can do that by getting, you fq.object gives you the current question. Make sense? So now you understand more about the form, right?
reform.
This is nothing to do with reform yet. Reform
Why?
just nothing. This is all Rails.
FQ.object.
Oh yeah, this is just Rails.
Yeah.
Forget about reform. Like reform, it just make this form act like response.
Yeah, but I mean, FQ.object actually is a question object or
It's a question object.
form object.
It's a question object. Just like f.object up here, it's a form.
It's a form, yeah.
It's the same. So that's the trick of form. Like that's why sometimes you see me doing this object.errors, right? So that's how you can copy this form code anywhere. Instead of doing survey user.errors. Right? I just write dry code. So
So I see. So FQ and F they are form builder, right?
yeah,
Form builder and then
and yeah, they just
we
all
have object.
delegate to one another. Makes sense, right?
Yeah. But that means so it depends how we grab the form builder around. Maybe that object, maybe a form object or an object. Right.
How do you yeah, so Rails convention is this. If you use form for, f.object is the same as this. If you use fields for and you pass an object to it, or if it's understood, then you just fq.object is the same as the current object, right?
Too much.
So fq.object is the same as this.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Okay. But without it,
If you don't pass this,
yeah, then FQ.object means
this is a little difficult to explain. If you don't pass this,
yeah.
it's problematic because Rails will say, oh, the second argument is missing, so I'm going to guess.
Really?
And then when it guesses, it will see that form.question is there, so it will do this n times. That's what happens down here. If you don't pass, it's the same as not passing. This is exactly the same. Having this or this is the same. Because Rails just call that. You see that one? Similar to how you render partial, right? If you render partial, render question. If you don't, then it will just expand out. It's just understood. Okay? I will open this up so you guys don't get too afraid. Fields for. So it's a little hard to understand, but basically, if you pass in a record object, then it only run it once. Okay, if you pass an array, that's okay, right? Fields for. All right. Now, if you pass, it's a little there here. Nested attributes. That's the, let's say a person has an address, right? When you use fields for, right? No, this is a little silly because it's not using personal. So when you use fields for, here, this is just the FQ thing, right?
Yeah.
If you use just colon, it just use person dot address. There's only one record. Okay. In this case, just one record because it's a has one relationship. Yeah. Now that's one to one. You see, one to one is simple.
Yeah.
One to many, a person has many projects, and then normally this is not advised. Like this is for a small project, okay, but for your company project, try not to use this except nested because 1 year later everyone will hate everyone. So let's say if you pass in a plural, then this model cannot be used, right? Now if you pass in the string, it will try to use person dot projects and will run this block 2 times, right? Twice because you have 2 projects, right? But then they say, that's not clear, right? So it's possible to just do it, which is what I just did. You loop over it first, each project, and then you can even filter. You can say only for active project, and then you pass in the object directly. Then this is only run once.
Yeah. But when we would use this to view or to just
This is to
view
create the form elements.
yeah, but create the form.
So
So
go
you
back to
need
this.
to update.
So I can create this guy.
Yeah.
This sometimes can be typed like select, text type, radio button, or anything. But I want it so that when I press submit, it will pass the data inside survey questions, blah.
So, but when we want to skip one to so basically we have an array of attributes, right?
Uh-huh.
And so when do we want to use it? Because if we use it, we can skip some attribute in the first look. You look through that the attribute the object,
So-
and then you render it.
Your question is when do we do this each or what?
Yeah, yeah,
It's just clearer right now, and also if you want to skip,
yeah. We can skip, right?
you can filter. Yeah, so it's really your preference. But I explained that if you do it this way, your question is right here. If you do it this way down here, then you have to get question by doing fq.object.
Okay.
That one makes sense, right? Okay, so understanding fields for, you see how see, this is another way, right? You just pass an array. When you pass an array, but the problem with this approach, right? You don't know the index. With this approach, you can change it to
Index.
with index,
Yeah.
and then you have index.
Right.
So this approach is more powerful. Yeah? Okay, it doesn't matter. Now, all right, so let's say when we design our form, note, another way to use fields for. Okay, so use this way. Now guys, we have a survey response form. Down here, what do you think we are going to render here? Obviously, the user is taking the survey, right?
Yeah.
So we are displaying down here, yeah, so let's say, nothing crazy here, question title, no, survey title. And what's that? Form.title, because this is delegate, right? It just passed to survey.addResponse, survey. So technically, this is form is what is form? Form is a response, right?
Yeah.
So technically, form is survey.title. But
But it depends on how we delegate.
right, but then you don't want to do too many dot. because
Like
these
law
too
of
many
Demeter.
law of Demeter. So you can just do survey title. And how can you make this happen? Easy in your
Unless
form
attribute,
class, in your class response.
form.
This is reform form, right? You can delegate survey to delegate to model. So when you have a model, it's just the object. When this is, if you do response form, this is form. Model is in inner attribute, so which is a secret attribute where if you do response form dot new response, then this response becomes the model attribute, right? So when you do this now, when you do dot survey, it will call response dot survey, right? But now again, how can we get survey title? You delegate title to survey, yeah, but you say prefix true. Then use now response, which is this is form, right? This is now called form, and this is form.survey title. Actually calls response.survey.title. Does it make sense?
It's encrypted.
Right. So this is you guys know the presentation model, right? Under the presenter pattern,
Yeah.
just like that. So here in this
Yeah.
form, you say, what do my form need, right? My form just need basically the survey title and the questions.
Presenter or representer.
Presenter, yeah. Just
Presenter is something to submit input, right?
no, you're just presenting the model. It's a view layer, but you don't want to add all the extra attributes to your model. You want a presenter it's called the view model, right? Or the presenter. In some cases, they call it the decorator, right? Okay. Does it make sense so far?
It's for question. No answer.
Uh-huh. Which one? This one? Okay. The first, this is tricky. This is the text you want on the web on in the form. So you want it to be this one is S.
Like a key.
Yeah, the key. Remember this guy? This is only when you do survey form. We haven't talked about how we do a response form. When you submit, what happens when you submit a response? What params should you get?
A response.
So yeah, so obviously, so let's say my params, it will look like this, okay? So it will be ID, so that's the response ID. So this is 1, 2, 3.
Then list of response.
So now it's params response.
Question ID.
So now here, wait, so this is response, yeah? And params response. So now it's clearer why we call it question, right? So this is a hash, we already know. But in this hash,
The ID.
this is really hard. Basically, what do you want to call it? Okay, let's call it questions, right? But you're not saving to questions, right? You know that? You're not saving to questions, you're just saving to choice responses, like saving to answer. But doesn't matter,
Yeah.
because we are using a different form model. We don't use our object like survey question. That's why this is good. All right, let's say if I have that, what do you think if the user submit red for what's your favorite color? How would you submit this?
It should be alright.
Question
Yes, thank you. And so a user submit a list of answers. No?
Why don't just use answer
Yeah.
the answer.
Okay.
Or type of checkbox.
Yeah. So
Check.
so this is interesting, right? Like, yeah, what format? Okay, so say you're saying this should just be answers, right? Yeah, that's correct. Then okay, so basically right now, how do we use this? We just do params, response, answers. And what if we already have it, right? Technically, you can do each, and then this is answer params. and then here you can do answer.create answer param, right? But how can we create enough? Well, what are the important fields you have to have?
Question ID.
So answer, yeah, so you need the choice ID, right?
No, question ID.
Yeah.
Choice like red, blue, green.
But for what question?
Sure, you need that as well. Yeah?
But actually, we have
Is
a
that-
list of choices.
That's okay. You just
Yeah.
pass in, but there's one more. What is it?
This one.
Yeah? This the same thing as this guy.
I see.
But you don't have to, right? Because it's understood. So it's up to you. This is optional. Please ask if this doesn't make sense. It's very important. That's why I'm not covering the user management stuff yet. Okay. Does it make sense, guys?
Mm.
So as I think like that, I realize I don't need to name these questions, right?
Yeah.
Then it means I have to go back to this code up here. And when I create my form, I'm like,
Oh, answer.
right?
Index.
So then this should be fields for answers. Yeah? Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. But up here, is it answers? No. You still have to display each question. But the form has to be submitting to answers. So then, guys, here you actually say, you're actually passing. Well, this is very complicated here. Basically, that's why I mean you have to go home and figure it out because this is not easy. So, what are you doing in there? So, this fields for is just setting the expectation that you have to submit this. Okay, a bunch of this. So let's say I have that's red. Okay, content. Which here, someone choose red color, right? Is that okay? And then you have red, blue, green, and your age and blah blah here. Other choices here. So how can we submit this? I have to display over here. You put in the partial, okay? But we'll put it all in here. You actually have to display. This is question title. Okay? Question title. Question dot title. So this is what's your favorite name? Oh no. What's your name and what's your favorite color, right? But now you display the choices. Yeah? Let's do the one situation only, which is multiple choice. Okay. And this is gonna blow your mind because it's actually really complicated. So let's do the checkbox option. It's the easiest. Okay. Or maybe the short answer, but yeah, checkbox. Question dot answers. Yeah. Dot no, not dot answer. Question dot what? Choices. Is that right? Each do choice. Again, forget about this guy for now. Huh? Forget about the fields for here. You're just trying to display the survey, right? So this is the work that you did and you did, right? So I'm going to display, okay, let's do the short answer. No, short answer is not generic enough. Let's do the checkbox one. When you just render the survey, you just do the checkbox tag that, and then that's like, okay, it looks like a checkbox, but that's not good enough. What do you put in here? What you want to put is this guy, right? It actually looked like if you use tag, okay, then it's response, answers, and then something like this. Oh, something happened here. Something is strange. Do you guys know? Is there a better way?
Joy it should be
Yeah. Well, choice can be an array when you do a bunch of this. The problem is if you just submit, this is difficult to explain, but if you just submit like this, they will overwrite each other within params and answers.
So, it should be. Yeah, I mean, they have to be have index 0, 1, 2, 3.
So yeah, so another way to think about it is, what if you have something like this, but it's actually, remember this guy? But what if, okay, think about this one down here, because when you render each question, when you render each question, just one question, and then inside that questions, you have an ID of the question. That's the, this is question ID, and then in here, then you have the answers for that question. It's like, oh, why? So that's a little, that's why this becomes harder and harder, but you have no choice. You have to make sure this form works very well. So when you work through this, it seems crazy, but as you work on it, you're like, I'm going to keep it simple for now, but maybe I might have to wrap it within the question, field for question, field for tag. So I leave it as a homework for you guys. So in here, what you're doing here is display the choices. That's simple. In each, this is question title. So here you display the choice.content, right? And imagine if you do a checkbox option, then you have to display the checkbox. So maybe this is the label. That's a label, right? Whatever F here, you can say f.label content. But then here, if you say f dot checkbox, you want this to be nested, so that's why this guy have to be somewhere here. And now this is FQ, because you want the prefix. Yeah? Okay. Go home and that's like, try to implement how you take a survey. And you just see like, you can learn a lot from that one. Yeah, to submit that. It's quite interesting. Okay, let's get back to what actually we're supposed to learn today.
I guess a break.
Now take a break and drink some water.